Should we mute our mics? I think if we mute our mics, then it is easier to. Good evening. I'm Avneet, an artist and art teacher. Today we start our conversation and interaction series with an interactive presentation on community tourism, education, and social impact by Sumesh Mangalcheri, founder of the social enterprise company, The Other Direction. Sumesh will be discussing their extensive experience in running the organization among the agrarian community in Wayanad. An introduction to Sumesh and a small video about social sustainable tourism in Kerala by Kabini have been shared with you. This is an open-ended forum and we envisage it will generate alternate ideas, conversations, collaborations, and participation. We also believe it will lead to the emergence of groups implementing socially conscious programs, policies, and projects. Initially, we are starting with a small group which includes many leading luminaries and accomplished public personalities. We thank all of you for joining us in this collective, where one is not expected to agree with others but will accommodate one another and accept diversity in thought and action, a very urgent need of the hour. We hope in the coming days this group will not only grow in terms of participants, but also in ideas and actions on the ground. Thank you. I request you to keep your mics muted till the Q&A. I hand it over to Sumesh. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Avneet, and a very good evening to all of you. I'm so sorry, power has gone here, so I'll be invisible for some time, but it's okay. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much again, and I'm very happy that my mentor Suresh and Dandraj joined here, because my story definitely, a kind of a work which I am doing today started from there actually, because the other side of me I still explain as my previous life actually, because I was working as a software engineer and all. So I will start with that basically. I was working here in Bangalore as a software person for some time. That exactly the time, a small city called Calicut, which is in Kerala, which was witnessing a protest against a Gwalior Crayons factory, which was polluting a river called Chaliar. And of course, many of us, we were protesting against, that, pollution. So I was a student and just started my, just finished my college. And of course, we were working and Equations, an organization which based in Bangalore, working on tourism, critiquing tourism, mainstream tourism models and all. So they were also very active in this particular protest. And of course, many people in Kerala, they took that protest as an environment kind of a struggle. But through our interactions with people like Suresh, Dandraj and others in Kerala, we took it as a development issue. And if you really analyze that particular protest, you could understand that it is a development issue. Of course, environment is part of it. So that gave me a larger understanding about development. And I started working with Equations in many roles. Even today, I'm continuing that work. So that gave me a larger understanding about issues like development and all, which also gave me an opportunity to work with grassroots, like people like fisher folk, Adivasis, and of course I'm also from a farmer family. I'll just share my presentation. I have a little PowerPoint which I prepared for something else, but I'll share here also. So it's visible, my screen?
Yeah, very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So, of course, I'll start. Of course, I had a 20 plus years of experience in working in tourism, and started with Equations. And till 2000, I was working with Equations. Then I went back to Kerala. I wanted to start something different there. So we met, a couple of us, we met in Wayanad, and we wanted to, start something. So we started an organization called Kabani, and the name Kabani also came from, you all know, there is a river called Kabini. Karnataka we call it Kabani, and Kerala it is still Kabani. So the important feature of Kabani, basically, you all know that there are many rivers in Kerala, and most of them are flowing towards west and reaches Arabian Sea. And Kabani is among one which flow towards east and reaches Karnataka. So we named the organization as Kabani, the other direction. When we started the organization, the capital was many years of experience as critic, group. And also we were critiquing tourism as a development model, because especially this has special relevance in Kerala even today, because Kerala is one of the state took tourism as a development model under the notion that which can bring a lot of employment and other opportunities. And when we started in Wayanad, that's also an important point of time, because that's a time Wayanad was witnessing an agrarian crisis, which was really severe. Many farmers committed suicide and all. And exactly the same time, the tourism industry was propagating that tourism can be an alternative to agriculture. I think that's where we started, and we had an opinion, and still we have an opinion that agriculture cannot be replaced by tourism, but tourism can be an additional income for suffering farmers. And also, when tourism discussions in the state, even today, there are slight changes now, very hegemonic. So it was always one-sided. Anybody who is, bringing some critic branded as anti-nationals and so on, so traitors and so on. And also the kind of a statistics and projections department always giving is fake projections. It is almost always inflated statistics in terms of tourist arrivals, foreign exchange, which generate and all, and not much civil society, interventions. This is the context we started our work. And of course, 2005, we formed our organization as a non-profit organization, basically learning from organizations like Equations and other organizations. We identified our areas as research, advocacy, training and all. But we also wanted to facilitate community-based tourism initiative, because Kerala, the need for an alternative income was very prominent even today. So we wanted to add one more element in it, which is basically facilitating community tourism initiative. That's how we started our program in Wayanad. We started working with farmers in the beginning. We set up or we facilitated their homestays, and we also helped them to find out some market and all. That's how we started. But on the other hand, also we did a lot of campaigns in tourism, basically, in the backwater area, the so-called tourism product called houseboat was, it's polluting the entire backwater area, which is also, creating a lot of issues there. So I'm not getting into all those details, but we also did a lot of campaigns in the beginning. And of course, along with all these campaigns, we were also suggesting a better model of tourism, which is basically, a combination of, this. And of course, in 2007, we also did an attempt. Probably that was the first time we were trying to address consumers, so-called travelers. We prepared a guidance booklet for tourists, basically those who are visiting Kerala, how they can visit Kerala in a fair manner. We also published it in Germany, because we had a friend who helped us in translation and publishing and all. So this is the first time I would say we attempted to address travelers, and which was also giving better choices for travelers. So we were doing this till 2010, 12 and all. That's the point we realized that, our model in Wayanad, which was getting a lot of, importance, and people were, many people were wanted such models in other parts of the state. So it was slightly difficult for us to continue that NGO model. So that's the time, as a non-profit organization, self-sufficiency was also an issue for us. So we wanted a different strategy. So we formed a people-oriented profit company, which is Kabani Community Tourism and Services. So basically, the main aspect of the company even today is, we get a lot of volunteers and other social capital and all. And of course, structurally there is a difference, but we continue our work in a different, style even today. And most of the profit, actually, last year we reached our break even, but then COVID came. It was slightly difficult, but still we survived. All of us are continuing our work and all. But still, whatever which is coming to money in terms of money in the village, which is a certain percentage goes back to village development. I'll explain that part later. This is an organizational structure we work with. Organizationally speaking, we have two entities, one as a non-profit, the other one as a profit. And we very clearly differentiate the roles and responsibility for both organizations, even though we share one vision. The profit part definitely facilitate homestays, and fair trade, consultancy, training, and all. And and we market all these homestays and all, both nationally and internationally. And on the other hand, the profit and non-profit part provides training, facilitate network, and so on. I would say now we are giving more emphasis to this profit part because the lack of resource is also a problem for us. But still, like for example, we are also through networking, we are trying to address, the non-profit part a bit now. But still, we are continuing and oppose and propose kind of an approach. One hand, we are opposing a mass tourism, which is detrimental to many things, and also propose a better model of tourism, which is more equitable and community based and all. So this is when we started in 2011, 12 and all, responsible tourism came into Kerala in a big manner. Even today, it's a big news because they won a lot of international awards and all. But of course, we were also trying to define what is responsible for us as community. So basically, we defined it as a community as decision makers and benefit sharing with communities. Not just individual benefit, the community as a whole. And of course, environment conservation and enhancement is one of the major area. And of course, supplementary income for communities, and tourism not a development model, but a facilitator. We don't want to create more dependency on tourism. And I think today this argument has more relevance because tourism is one of the industry which is suffering from COVID today. And of course, 2 years ago, the discussion of over tourism, converted into today's no tourism discussion. So we can see that. So we have a strong business model, which is basically network oriented. And we are also leveraging existing facilities. For example, we facilitate farmer homestays, which is acting as a secondary source of income for communities, not a main source of income for communities. And we don't build anything, any infrastructure for tourism. Like, for example, none of the homestays are newly built. We are all using existing infrastructure. I think Kerala has special relevance on this strategy because according to something like 2011 or 2012 study, Kerala has something like 1.2 million houses are empty, mostly NRI built houses. So it's an untapped opportunity which we can use further. Of course, these homestays are enriching experience for travelers, and also most of the benefits remain with community. And when I say the business advantage of homestays, the people who are part of the homestay network, they haven't really invested anything, which is also giving a competitive advantage in terms of business. And we also work with small enterprises. We call them it's micro enterprises, small resorts, cottages, and sometimes people, those who are leasing out some property and running the tourism business and all. So we work like that also. Basically, we provide them managerial and training help and marketing help. That's how we work as a business model. So basically, we work with a strong idea of community participation in all our program. When I say community participation, which is also basically a misunderstood or misinterpreted concept, mostly community participation in tourism is limited to local sourcing and menial jobs. Most of the community-based tourism project also NGO participation or token participation, and that is what mostly we see. And also existing mechanism of local governance are also bypassed by most of the conservation and other development activities, like the tiger conservation, for example. And also, if you talk about Kerala, where so-called decentralization took place compared to other Indian states, where also tourism is a subject which is not transferred to local self-governments. So that is also a good discussion today. And voluntary schemes are also not sufficient. So what we did through our interaction with communities all these years, we defined participation in 4 levels. One is participation in decision making and governance, and participation in business and sharing benefits, and participation in management. And I think it has special relevance in the context of destination management, because if you really analyze tourism debate today, that is one of the major aspects lacking today. And of course, participation in monitoring tourism is also important, because tourism is always a development model. So to what extent?
It's echoing.
Sorry?
It's echoing.
I think I'll use my...
No, actually, please everybody...
I'll use my headphone,
mute.
Maybe.
Please mute, everybody mute. Somebody would have...
Is it okay now?
Muted. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, so participation in monitoring and regulating tourism is also very important. So I'm not getting into all the details, but I would like to present a couple of programs which are currently working with our involvement. Now, I mean, of course, we are working in Wayanad. We are also working in Munnar. We are also just started working in Karnataka, Karwar, and other parts of Andhra Pradesh and all.
Sumesh, if you don't mind, can you go to the previous slide?
Okay.
Just the participative.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want me to explain it further?
No, that's fine. I just wanted to see it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry if you can point out if I'm so fast, because I want to keep the time also. Yeah. So I will explain one such work, which is basically we currently work with Kutambuja Grama Panchayat, which is in Ernakulam, which is one of the biggest panchayat in Kerala, where now we are working on a sustainable tourism policy prepared by Gram Panchayat. The work is in progress. Of course, the research and the policy, advocacy part equation also, part of it. And we are also now preparing guidelines for each stakeholders, like homestays, hoteliers, and other stakeholders in tourism. And like, for example, if you want to get a license for homestays there, they have to follow these guidelines. That Panchayat is also, they set up a basic guideline, but the detailed guidelines is also under preparation. So Panchayat is also creating community-led business models in tourism. This project is supported by Government of Kerala through Haritha Kerala Mission, and they're also getting the financial support from UNDP India. So this is the policy part. And I've already explained 4 levels of participation. And participation of decision making here, Panchayat, what they're trying they are creating a subject committee in tourism at Panchayat level. According to the Panchayati Raj Act, they have the provision to do that. So a subject committee means you can invite experts, Panchayat president, secretary as an ex officio, and other representatives like youth, women, Kudumbashree, all part of it. So they are preparing the guidelines for both travelers and host community. And they're also trying to link tourism to the sustainable development of the village. Like, for example, Panchayat, the agriculture department is working with Panchayat. So now they're trying to link agriculture activities to tourism. Like those who are part of homestay, they're also creating some guidelines related to agriculture. So those kind of activities are also happening there in this regard. And of course, participation in business is very important. So a lot of activities are happening in terms of tourism products or programs or whatever. Women storytellers, guides, autos, all part of it. And it's also important that in this regard, Panchayat is also facilitating incentives and subsidies for those who are part of tourism business there, especially homestays and small storytellers, Adivasis and all. And the Panchayat is also included training or capacity building as part of their plan, Panchayat plan actually, annual plan. So those kind of policy level initiative also happening in this regard. And of course, we also set up some sort of a benefit sharing mechanism because whatever you say, tourism also as a kind of a class issue. I mean, any development definitely, but tourism, whenever I'm talking about homestay, if you want to be part of a homestay community, you need to have certain, skills like communication skills or certain facilities that also define in Kerala context, caste and class definitely. So, but at the same time, the Panchayat or we want to spread the benefits of tourism to the entire community. So created a kind of a benefit sharing mechanism. In our program, which is working well, Panchayat, we are trying, but we might need to rework a bit on this part actually. So this is also working. You can see then some percentage of benefits go to different parties. Of course, I already mentioned that participation in management, which is a very serious issue, especially when it comes to destination management. And if you really analyze Panchayati Raj Act, something like 29 powers and functions which is related to tourism is with local panchayats. So definitely those provisions can be utilized for a better management system. The functional committee or subject committee facilitated at the Panchayat level, they are also analyzing a visitor management program with different visitor management tools. And they're also developing adequate infrastructure development, like depends upon the visitation of certain destination, and we call it those destinations as micro destination. And definitely they're also working on carrying capacity. This is a work in progress actually. And guidelines for travelers also under progress, which is all coming into a proper website very soon. And Kerala now, every Grama Panchayat, we have more or less proper waste management system through Haritha Kerala mission. And that system is very much used in this regard. And of course, participation in monitoring is a big issue. Collection of actual data on arrival and spending and other aspects of tourism is a big issue. And whatever Kerala tourism is providing today is, I would argue, inflated. There are a number of studies which is proving that, a lot of duplication and other problems in that. So in this case, Panchayat is trying to collect all those data at local level. It's a very decentralized manner. So they are creating a system for that. I mean, small level, they already started, like ecotourism centers and all. They are collecting it from the entry fee data and all. So, which is giving a comprehensive understanding about tourism in the region. So this also helps Panchayat to plan better. And now Panchayat is also including biodiversity management committee provisions into tourism. Like in Kerala, every panchayat now they have BMC, Biodiversity Management Committee, and they do biodiversity management, biodiversity auditing, which is also they are trying to link to tourism today. And based on all this, they're also trying to prepare a criteria for monitoring tourism. And the new development with this particular area, in the given situation, like for example, this COVID situation, and also we have a lot of other disasters in Kerala. 2018, we had a flood, and before that, we had Nipah. And I mean, 2019 also we had a flood, then COVID. So disaster management in tourism at various levels is also an issue. So what Panchayat is trying to do in Kerala, most of the Panchayat now they prepare disaster management plan at Panchayat level. Now in this particular Panchayat, we are trying to link this particular plan into tourism. Like we are also discussing it with town planning, town, country and planning department and all. They are basically, they have the legal mandate for preparing such plans, and that then once they prepared it, it's legitimized. So that discussion is also under progress. And I just want to give one or two examples, and I'll stop. We have a couple of programs, and one such program is basically Walking Kuttampuza. This was also an attempt from our side. Basically, the entire program we designed with community. Like, for example, almost it took some 2-3 months. Some of my colleagues are also here, I assume, so they can explain. So the entire program designed by community. The idea of this and the advantage of this, actually, when they prepare a program like this, they also took adequate questions, like a lot of Adivasi communities there. They consider some areas are sacred places. So there are, certain regulation for entry to that place. So a lot of things inbuilt in this program. So that is one advantage of such a participatory design process. Maybe we have a lot of designers here. They could add a lot on this. And of course, the entire program we designed through participatory resource mapping and cultural mapping. Community themselves identified their resources and using for tourism with adequate precautions. And this has also created a lot of awareness at local level and also consumer education. And the most interesting aspect of it, the entire program has more or less, more local ownership. So these all are basically, some of the programs which we does. Nothing artificial, everything is basically within the community and their resources. And I just want to mention one project which also still working. Immediately after the flood situation in Wayanad, you can see that this is the village completely destroyed by flood. The farmers, they lost their paddy and other crops. What we did actually, we formed a program with villagers, a program called Naam Anpode, which is basically a collective of farmers, travelers, and consumers together. So what we did actually, we formed a collective of 100 travelers and consumers. We pulled some money together. They all kind of invested. And that money farmers use for cultivating organic paddy. You can see that all agriculture activities we celebrated, and that was also kind of a tourist attraction. And then those who invested in this program, mainly travelers, they got their money back as rice actually. So we distributed the produce to them. So it's worked really well. And what we also did, we developed farmer homestays there in that particular village. And whenever we celebrated all these agriculture activities and all these consumers and others also, they used to come to the village and stay there. And we also developed other activities like village walks and other actions. And then a lot of women and other storytellers are there. So actually this program, which generated two kinds of income. one hand, the farmers, they got their investment from consumers because they're all invested in advance. And on the other hand, they also took tourism as an additional income. So a lot of people, they visited the village. So another kind of a economy also worked out. And this was a very interesting program. And now we are taking this learning to other programs. So you can see some of this experience here. So I'm not taking too much time. So probably we can discuss further. I'm sure you might have some questions. Definitely, we can go for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're opening it for questions and any other clarification, any other additional information.
Hi, very interesting presentation there. What is the time frame of this project? Like, how long has it been running? If from the time you started working with the communities?
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, we have been working in many places, but Wayanad program we started in 2006. But in the Kutambura I explained, we started recently. It depends upon the location, but in general, I would say it's a very slow process. If you really want to build a program in a village, it will take definitely 1.5 year, because it is a trial and run error. I mean, error running program basically. So that's how we work. And like I explained, a working program which took almost a month to decide. So we have a methodology which we develop now through our experience. It's all practical experience, nothing theory in this, all working models. So what we do basically, if you get an invitation or find a village, we do a complete participatory resource mapping with villagers after the consensus building and all. So through that process, we identify the resource. I mean, basically they identify the resource, we are facilitators, and that will convert into programs, packages, and all. And based on those resources, we have a training module, and different training programs also will be conducted based on that. So when I say training, it's not just hospitality. Of course, if you take homestay training module, for example, waste management, hygiene, even certain extent energy, I mean, even gender and all part of this training. So that's how we develop a program. It's a long process, I would say.
Yeah, so, and my follow-up is like the youth from these communities, how have they responded to the program? Like, do you see them kind of reconnecting with their traditional practices in some ways, and kind of looking at tourism as a way to also reflect, like, has it affected the dynamics between generations in some sense? That's one. And also in terms of caste dynamics, what have you noticed with what has happened with the communities?
I would say it's a mixed experience. If you take a place like Wayanad, for example, none of the people from younger generation, they are in agriculture because they always go for something else. But if you take this one or two villages, definitely we have village youth. Of course, they're graduated and all, but they're also in agriculture, and they're also sometimes acting as a storyteller whenever they are coming to. Whenever they are getting people in the village. That's one aspect. And the other aspect, the involvement of students community is very interesting, actually. I think last 2-3 years, it's a new development, I would say. We have a lot of academic programs. Like we now it's not there, but we used to get students from international, for example, Oslo University. they usually come to our villages and do research. Like Kerala model of development is, one of the pet subject, everybody. So, so these students, youth, they, facilitate all these interviews and all, because sometimes they have a language problem because they have to conduct interviews at the village level and all. So they conduct. So we find that it's an interesting aspect because there is a mutual kind of an exchange which is happening in terms of information and knowledge. And also they get a different exposure. And this year we did it in online also. I mean, last 2 months ago, we did this program online because these people conducted this interview online.
Thank you.
Any other question? Sumesh, I have a question. Oh, Guru, you want to ask a question?
No, I will.
No, you continue. Actually, I'll ask. Yeah, Guru.
Okay.
Dr. Guru.
So, I was just wondering, Sumesh, regarding the biodiversity aspect of the region, because nowadays that's another key area where photographers or travelers kind of thing, they are engaged in and trying to get hold of either it's amphibians or reptiles kind of stuff. That's one part of looking at the things. I don't know how you have looked at. In addition to that, there's also a kind of cap from the National Biodiversity Authority in letting people go and do their adventure. Especially if it's a foreign national coming over there and having an interaction, it becomes cumbersome to actually manage between both community and the participant kind of thing. Because you will, the local forest department, they have a different dynamics when the foreign national comes in and all, and NBA has another set of rules for that. So how are you actually, in fact, navigating between all these aspects?
I mean, we don't have much experience with that aspect actually, but we have touched some of these aspects. Like I'll tell you one examples. One is now we are Kerala. We have this biodiversity management committee. They do this biodiversity auditing and all. So we are trying to work with them at village panchayat level now. That's one aspect we just started. But some of our farmers, like for example, we have a person in Wayanad. He's an excellent bird watcher. Also a farmer, definitely. He's not an ornithologist in that sense, but he's a farmer. He documented something like 160 birds in that particular village, literally photographed. So he's definitely giving an awareness to, students, travelers and all on that aspect. That's number one. Number two, we did a small attempt in 2019 with Grama Panchayat called Panamaram Gram Panchayat in Wayanad, where, some kind of this, not exactly, I forgot the name of that bird, that big birds, which is coming to a paddy field in that particular area. And it's a really heavy, that bird. And that bird is coming to paddy field and sit on, paddy. And that is completely, destroyed. So farmers are always, kind of against this particular, bird. Kind of an anti this developed because of their life and livelihood, definitely. So what we did actually with Shastra Sahitya Parishad and other groups, we sort of facilitated with, other groups in Wayanad. Actually, there are traditional varieties of rice, which is resilient to this actually. So even though a bird come and sit on this particular paddy, this will again come back because this is a very traditional variety rice of Wayanad. I forgot the name of the variety. So Panchayat and KSSP and all, even KSSP financially supported that actually through some contribution and all. So it was an attempt. So, but what happened actually, again, the entire paddy gone with 2019 flood. So, and then of course the cultivation happened and Shastra Sahitya Parishad again invested and all. But we wanted to make it as a kind of a bird sanctuary and all, but now again that discussion is on with the new panchayat and all. So these all are the small attempt we did, but we are trying to address this issue in the new project, which is a forest area, where we are trying to prepare certain guidelines. Like from a visitor management perspective, like for example, if you take ecotourism areas in Munnar, entire project is working based on, I mean, the economy is working based on the entrance fee. So the officer who is managing the park or whatever, his mandate is always to get more visitors. So that is really a problem because there is no concept of carrying capacity and all. So that is something which we are trying to work with the government, Panchayat and Forest Department in that area now. So this is a new area for us, definitely, but small attempts are there.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any more questions?
Have you kind of produced any documentation that maybe other groups can use, like the case study kind of things, which we can use in other community spaces?
Yeah, some of the case studies are available, and the training modules are also ready now, which will be published very soon. I mean, it's all, whoever is asking us, definitely we are providing. So that is available. And now we are also, maybe Narendran can also explain a bit more actually, because, all these 15 or maybe little more than 15 years, all these experience we sort of documented and moduled actually, like the entire training modules based on our experience. So we also want to share with this to others. So we're also now discussing with people like Narendran and all, we are discussing about a possibility of a community college, a larger, a broader framework. And probably, Narendra, you can also explain in the later stage our discussion. So, yeah, so I'm sure.
I'm asking because there was one community I engaged with a part of an activist group some years ago, which was located in the central grasslands of Karnataka. So it has like a lot of cultural heritage, ecological heritage, as well as like it's a blanket weavers community. And of course, the politics was really much different here at that point. The lands were being auctioned off. The forest lands, which were grasslands, were being called dry and barren and have been actually given off to different institutes. So the community grazing has kind of stopped. So it was primarily an activist-centric thing. But when I engaged with them, with the youth and with the villages, I saw a lot of potential just in terms of how they were looking at their culture. So when I was at Shrishti, we did some kind of what you were saying, like, we took students and engaged with the community. It was a kind of a reflexive ethnography kind of an exercise. But because I wasn't a part of an NGO, the institutional framework didn't let us do anything further. It kind of stopped right there. And since the activists also didn't have the intention to go forward. So the other thing is that, some material would really help. And I'm just trying to think how we can kind of take it back to that space, because I always feel like it's left a residue. Like I feel like I have left it incomplete. So that was something I wanted to kind of think about. But I think also the politics helps a lot, the politics of the land. How has that kind of helped your project progress in some ways?
Sorry, last part I missed.
The politics of the land also helps the project progress, right? Like here, there's a lot of political kind of intervention in terms of developing forest land, So the impetus is to kind of take away land from communities that are already being used for a certain purpose. There's a lot of other kinds of agitations going on with respect to land. So that kind of intervenes in these kinds of processes where community needs to see value in kind of looking at their culture's heritage and marketing it in a certain way that can be useful for them.
Yeah. I think maybe like acts like Forest Right Act and all may be relevant in this area, I think. So that I think we have to look at it into that aspect also. But of course, now we are getting a lot of invitation from other parts of the country. Like, for example, recently Karnataka invited us to Karwar, where somewhere a place called Joida, there is a concentration of Siddhi indigenous community there. So they want to develop some project there. So we went there and we did some sort of a feasibility study. And of course, we have some concerns also. we submitted it to the Panchayati Raj department here. They want to do that anyway. District Panchayat, Zilla, Panchayat and all. And that's one thing. And another project actually, which we had a request from Rampo Chadavaram, which is in Andhra Pradesh, which is a section 25 area, which is close to Rajamundry. So we did a feasibility study there already, and we have submitted a kind of a proposal. A lot of issues, definitely, and the self-rule area basically. But we found that it's really interesting because a lot of other powers which we can also use. Like for example, in Kerala context, we are trying to use the powers of Gram Panchayat, but in this case, it's traditional Panchayat. So probably we should try to So this is also a new experience for us, to work with a traditional Panchayat. So we are trying, but now it's COVID, everything is sort of delayed.
Right. Thanks. Thank you.
I'll send you some documents. Definitely, maybe I can circulate.
Yeah, great. That'd be great.
Yeah. And also, I have to really mention that we also got a couple of interns from Srishti and other institutes. They also helped us to develop this walking tours and all. And I think we have a program called Walking Wayanad, which is a 12-kilometer walk. A similar methodology we adopted there also. I think she developed a couple of story cards. There is a intern from Srishti. I think we will be launching it very soon, another 2-3 weeks. And also
Nice.
Another one helped us to develop a card in Calicut, where we were trying to brand Calicut as a city of values. So we'll also come up with that very soon. At least 2 cards, I think. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you.
Saumini wanted to ask a question, but unfortunately the power cut, there's a power cut. So Sri might be sending the question. Yeah. Meanwhile, actually, Sumesh, I have a question because, please, sir. Please, Suresh, please. Suresh wanted to ask a question. Yeah.
Thanks, Narendran.
Most welcome, sir.
No, I didn't want to ask a question. I wanted to make a comment. So I said that, I would wait for colleagues to complete the direct questions that they may have of Sumesh's presentation. First of all, thank you, Sumesh. It's always wonderful to listen to you in spite of the fact that I may have heard the story of Kabini several times, but it's like my mother says, a good cook, you can always go back to the person and ask for the recipe the 10th time, and you will find that there is an element which you never heard before. So with Sumesh, it's always that, I always hear with delight elements which I had probably not picked up in his earlier narratives. Thank you very much for that very interesting evening, and also the way in which you articulated the interpretative work of Kabini. I'd like to sort of look at that aspect because of 2 reasons. One is tourism is all about interpretations, isn't it? It is about interpreting something which we conceive of as the other. If that conception of the other did not exist, one wouldn't even go and visit something else, because it is because there is a conception of the other which is different from me and my ways of doing things that the other becomes interesting, enticing, exciting, and therefore marketable in many ways. So in Kanyakumari, you can market the sunrise, and somewhere you can market the sunset, and all in between as well. But I think the most interesting aspect for me about Kabini's work, which I picked up, and also in today's talk from Sumesh, has been the ways in which they have done the interpretation within the community and the interpretation for the community. And I think that these are 2 distinct articulation elements, and that happens only because Sumesh and his colleagues are also deeply embedded in the in the culture and the ecosystem of the location in which they're working. I mean, the points that you made, Sumesh, about the paddy and the bird, and the link, therefore, to an indigenous rice variety. Now, these are possible. These interlinkages and these connections are possible only when you know what you're interpreting, and when you're doing layerings of interpretation. And when Narendran invited me for this evening, I mean, he talked about how we look at educating and the spaces and the ways in which we educate ourselves as well. And in many ways, tourism is about educating, isn't it? Also, at one level. So that there's that aspect. Then of course the brilliant new thing that Kabini has done is also to help the systems within that system to recognize what could be the role of each of these subsystems in the ways in which they would want to articulate that role, not in the way in which it is thought for themselves. For them, as is usually the case in a top-down planning process. One assigns a function or a role to a certain group or a subsystem. But I think what Kabini has done is for valorizing the elements within the subsystem and allow the subsystem to begin to look at those roles a lot more differently, and to also to bring to bear a new articulation of their roles. And in that process, I think Kabini has created a toolkit. I'm sorry, but that word is kind of a bit of a red flag nowadays, I understand. So I don't know whether I should attribute it to you guys. But in any case, since Narendran has called me here, you may as well. But I think that what Kabini has done is also to create that kind of a method by which one could, bring a meaning-making process for subsystems within the larger system. Which is why when he talks about destination management, a word which is used quite normally in the tourism circles, but in a more planning context, one would talk about a larger area, in which you are thinking through micro elements, of what your functionalities that you want to bring to the subsystem. And I think Kabini has been able to interpret that in a brilliant sort of way. But I must also, and maybe this is a question, the rest of it was a bit rhetorical, and apologies for that. But my question has also been that, I mean, in the case of, say, Kerala, the interesting thing is that Kerala as a tourism product is very mature. It's one of those 50 places on earth that you must visit before you die kind of places, isn't it? I mean, so Kabini didn't have to do any marketing of Kerala. It is a done deed. What you've done is to recognize a new element within that larger, tourism appetite, if I may put it that way, and given it a place, which is looking at the community, looking at homestays, and homestays are particularly interesting experiment that you have visualized, and I think it's one of the more mature sort of work that is happening on homestays in India. The work in Wayanad, I mean, from my limited understanding of what's happening in tourism around the country. But it is certainly a much more mature model. But I think that in many ways, the pandemic has put to tatters all of this, hasn't it? I mean, so, it's, you had a global minus 90%, something that, one doesn't visualize in any economic model, no? Economic models are always modeled around growth, not on negative growth. When you have this colossal tsunami-like, withdrawal of waves from the sea, from the you know, and therefore this would be something where one would really want to understand how the ways in which you have functioned has maintained the resilience aspect, you know, looking at it from an economic and you know, because you have actually positioned tourism within the larger development context, as you rightly pointed out, and therefore the livelihoods have also been cushioned in many ways. I mean, it's not been a sole livelihood model in many of these cases, whether it's Kutampura or, you know, other places in Wayanad itself, where you have done some fairly brilliant work. So, I mean, that's something that I'd like you to sort of elaborate on, or anybody to engage with. Thank you for allowing me that time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll introduce Mr. Suresh. Suresh is heading the ActionAid and also is a founder of the Equations, one of the oldest research firm in tourism in India. Yeah, thank you.
In fact, I started my work with Suresh, and many of this, I mean, even what you explained now as a foundation, Suresh, I think some of them I mean, got it from you, and I'm so thankful to, I mean, that. But when it comes to resilience aspect, I would say, I mean, of course, as a company, Kabani, of course, we are surviving, but with our consultancy training and all. As a company, definitely we had some sort of issues, which we are now discussing how to overcome it as a company, because it is also important, because we have to. But when it comes to community level, you know, none of our homestays, we call it homesteads now. We don't call it homestays now, because it is an ecosystem now, which is part of, like, when I say homestead, waste management, the generating waste they converted into manure that goes to their organic garden. And also we created a kind of I mean, with them we designed a kind of a homestead, which is an ecosystem now. None of the homesteads are depends upon tourism, because all of them are doing their agriculture. And of course, we envisaged it as a additional income. But in some cases, like for example, if you take 2017, we did an impact assessment in 2018, I think, yeah. And that year, actually, tourism was, you know, one of the, I mean, at least couple of homesteads. That was the major source of income. Like when we did a income analysis, it was something like some homestays, it was something like 60% or whatever. So slightly more than what they get from agriculture and all. But still, they do continue their other activities, and it's not really affected them. So they used to continue even today, they continue their agriculture and other activities. And some of them, they tried some new ways of agriculture as a group and all. So it's interesting. And if you take some of the villages like Trikepata and all, they also do some other entrepreneurial activities. So like food processing, for example, that is a good market now. So people are also able to, divert or diversify their activities now. So we don't have of course, I would argue that it is an opportunity cost rather than, seeing at it from a conventional industry, lens, because you know what is happening in the hotel sector and all. We don't have that kind of an issue, but I would say that there is an opportunity lost. I hope I answered, Suresh.
Yeah. Okay, we have one more last question. I think actually at the time. Saumini has sent a question. She asks actually, do you foresee handing over the baton completely to the community at some point without a facilitator?
Yeah, actually, if you take all these villages where we are working, there is no sole authority or dependence. They can also work with anybody, because we don't have any agreement or MOU or anything. But we have certain conditions, like, and also we set up village committees everywhere. And that committee is very independent, and they can take their decisions. Our role is always as facilitator. And it is always like build, operate. I mean, I'm using that anyway, that cliche, but still kind of a model. And tripartite's absolutely independent, and they even, some of them even work with some mainstream operators like OYO and completely came back to us because OYO is a very burning experience for them. But still, most of them, and also now the training module also now we are reworking. So in those training module, we also included how to use social media to promote homestays. So those kind of modules are also there now. So it is an independent model. We always happy, in that. But sincerely speaking, I would say that people are very happy with the guest which we are providing to them, rather than getting some, through some other channels. Because the kind of people we are getting, we do a lot of investment on those people, because the communication person in Kabini, she explain all the aspects of tourism before they arrive to any places. And also the kind of tour operators we work with, they are very sensitive, and they're like friends and all. So they also do a lot of education before they come to their homestead or whatever. So in that aspect, I think they're very happy to receive our guests rather than getting through other channels and all. So there is no dependency as such, but still they're happy to receive our people, our guests, through our marketing channel.
Thank you,
And
Sumit.
I would also like to mention one aspect, like, the main investment as a company, the area where we invest most of our money is actually in training. Something like 26% of our total budget last year went for training. That's a huge investment when it comes to really a competition, because other companies, they can invest that money for their marketing, which we can't. So that is a problem. But we are managing. But now the interesting aspect, like some areas, at least government is trying to, offering us some little money for training, like Karnataka, Andhra, and also this UNDP, Kutambuja and all UNDPs through government, they're also supporting.